Vivian Vance, the stage queen, who learned to laugh through her rage. Long before television history etched her forever into American hearts as the sharp-tongued Ethel Mertz, Vivian Vance harbored a bitterness so fierce it nearly eclipsed her brilliance. She truly hated him more than anyone. Some close to her would later whisper, a cryptic reference to a rivalry that burned silently behind sitcom laughter. But who was Vivian Vance before the sitcoms and simmering resentments? Born Vivian Roberta Jones on July 26, 1909 in Cherryvale, Kansas, she was raised in a rigid, conservative home where religion ruled and the arts were frowned upon. Her mother disapproved of acting. Yet the stage called louder than any hymn. From a young age, Vivian sought escape, not in rebellion, but in music, performance, and the aching dream of becoming someone bigger than her circumstances. Despite opposition, she trained under legendary drama coach Eva Le Gallienne and eventually found herself in Albuquerque, a small city that would serve as the unlikely launching pad for one of television's most iconic sidekicks. In dusty playhouses and modest local productions, she learned how to hold a spotlight, and more importantly, how to command it. Her move to New York City in the 1930s was nothing short of transformative. No longer confined to backwater productions, Vance became a Broadway regular, appearing in smash hits like Anything Goes and The Voice of the Turtle. Critics adored her. Audiences felt at ease with her. She wasn't glamorous in the traditional sense, but she radiated charm, wit, and heart. She was real. In 1937, she stepped into the shoes of none other than Kay Thompson in the Broadway musical Hooray for What, proving she could hold her own where others had already become legends. But her breakthrough came with Cole Porter's 1941 hit, Let's Face It. As Nancy Collister, Vance sang, danced, and delivered punchlines alongside Danny Kaye and Eve Arden, earning rave reviews across 547 performances. It was a triumph and a message to Broadway. Vivian Vance was here to stay. Hollywood noticed. And by the late 1940s, Vance was ready to pivot. She packed up and headed west to Los Angeles, determined to make the silver screen her next conquest. In The Secret Fury, 1950, she played Leah, a savvy chambermaid with a tough exterior and a vulnerable core. Critics applauded her range. The following year, she took on the role of Alicia in The Blue Veil, once again showcasing her emotional depth. These were not the glamorous roles given to bombshells. They were grounded, layered, and unforgettable, just like Vance herself. But in 1951, everything changed. She was cast opposite Lucille Ball in a little television experiment called I Love Lucy, and television, as America knew it, would never be the same. As Ethel Mertz, Vance delivered sarcasm with warmth, frustration with flair, and loyalty with bite. Her comedic timing was surgical. Her chemistry with Ball, unmatched. Together they became the first great female duo of television, lighting up screens with laughter that felt genuine because on some level it was. And yet, behind the curtain, Vance's world was far more complicated. While she and Ball developed a bond filled with affection, respect, and friction, there was another presence on set that stoked Vance's private fury. Whispers circulated for years that Vance had an intense disdain for William Frawley, the actor who played her on-screen husband, Fred Mertz. Their off-screen relationship was reportedly icy at best, laced with snubs, passive aggression, and mutual irritation. While she never publicly detailed the extent of her dislike, those closest to the production claimed Vance found working with Frawley nearly unbearable, and that hatred may not have been an exaggeration. Despite personal challenges, Vivian Vance made history. In 1954, she became the first actress to win an Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy, elevating the role of the sidekick from afterthought to centerpiece. Her portrayal of Ethel wasn't just comedic, it was human. She wasn't just Lucy's shadow. She was the friend who held things together, who grounded the chaos, and who gave voice to middle-aged women across America. In an industry obsessed with youth and glamour, Vivian Vance became a symbol of female complexity and resilience. She made audiences laugh, and maybe even cry, because she brought truth to the screen. Behind the humor, however, was a woman who had fought tooth and nail to be seen, respected, and heard, both in an unforgiving industry and in a world that told her to stay quiet, and she never did. Vivian Vance, Stardom, Survival, and the Quiet Fight Behind the Spotlight, Part 2. By 1965, Vivian Vance had once again reinvented herself. Audiences had already fallen in love with her as Ethel Mertz, but in The Lucy Show, Vance showed the world she still had more to give. As Lucy's new sidekick, she brought her trademark blend of wit and emotional grounding to a fresh television era. The show was a hit, and so was she. But behind the scenes, the stage lights were beginning to dim in ways she could feel deeply. After several successful seasons on The Lucy Show, Vance departed the series with the hope of reigniting her film career, a long-held dream that Broadway had delayed and television had eclipsed. That same year, she took a bold leap, accepting a role in Blake Edwards' 1965 screwball comedy, The Great Race. Starring opposite heavyweights like Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Natalie Wood, it was a chance, perhaps her last, to show Hollywood that she could still deliver cinematic gold. The film was a cheerful, extravagant romp, far removed from the meteor roles Vance had once craved. Though it garnered a handful of Academy Award nominations and enjoyed moderate box office success, it ultimately failed to restart her film career. For Vivian, it was both an accomplishment and a disappointment, proof that she still had range, but also a bitter reminder that Hollywood didn't know what to do with a woman of her age, talent, and depth. And so, her film ambitions quietly dissolved. Still, her career, from Broadway brilliance to sitcom superstardom, stood as a testament to resilience, talent, and reinvention. Vivian Vance had endured decades in an industry that so often consumed women and discarded them. She carved out a space for herself through raw ability, unmatched timing, and the uncanny knack for making every character feel real. Yet off-screen, her life was marked by pain that rarely showed in her smile. Vance was married 4 times, each marriage revealing different facets of her journey as a woman navigating love in the shadows of fame. Her first 3 marriages ended in divorce, strained by personal differences, the exhausting pace of her career, and her own struggles with depression. Details about her early husbands remain obscure, but what's known is that none could withstand the storm that swirled around a rising star who never stopped battling her inner demons. Her 3rd marriage, however, was the most tumultuous and the most damaging. From 1941 to 1959, she was wed to Philip Ober, an actor whose professional career paled in comparison to hers. As Vance's name became a household fixture through I Love Lucy, Ober reportedly grew jealous, resentful, and increasingly volatile. Rumors, whispered by friends, colleagues, and even members of the studio, suggested he was not only emotionally abusive, but at times physically violent. While Vance never publicly confirmed these allegations, those closest to her spoke of a home life that stood in brutal contrast to the joy she brought viewers every week. Her cheerful screen persona became a mask, a way to survive the reality behind closed doors. Some believe that the trauma of this marriage left her emotionally scarred, hesitant to trust, and deeply wary of future relationships. But healing, however gradual, finally came. On January 16, 1961, she married John Dodds, a literary agent and publisher known not for fame or flash, but for intellect, kindness, and unwavering support. Their union was everything her past relationships were not. Steady, respectful, built on emotional equality. Dodds, it seemed, didn't love her in spite of her success. He loved her because of who she was, success and scars alike. They made their home in Stamford, Connecticut, far from the cameras and Hollywood gossip. There, surrounded by books and quiet roads, Vance found a peace she had long craved. She took up painting, volunteered in her community, and became known locally not as a celebrity, but as a gracious neighbor and warm-hearted friend. In 1974, as health issues began to loom larger, Vance and Dodds moved back to California, closer to the industry that had both elevated and exhausted her, and closer still to Lucille Ball. Despite their sometimes rocky history, Lucy remained a constant in Vivian's life. Their friendship, complicated but deeply bonded by time and trials, endured. In many ways, Lucy was the sister Vance never had, a force who saw her, challenged her, and in some quiet way, always believed in her. But illness was catching up to her. Though she rarely spoke publicly about her deteriorating health, close friends noticed the change. Vance had battled breast cancer years earlier and suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. Still, she refused to fade quietly. She kept her sense of humor. She continued to paint, write, and reminisce about the road that had taken her from Kansas fields to Broadway lights to America's living rooms. Her final years were spent not in despair, but in reflection, surrounded by the love of a husband who cherished her and the distant but enduring affection of a public who still remembered her as Ethel, as Nancy, as Leah, and as Vivian. She passed away on August 17, 1979 in Belvedere, California at the age of 70. Lucille Ball, heartbroken, would later say, "Viv was the best. She could always make me laugh, and she always had my back." Vivian Vance and William Frawley. The war behind the laughter. After settling into the serene hills of Belvedere, Northern California, Vivian Vance and John Dodds lived out her final chapter in quiet companionship. Though her health continued to decline, marked by multiple strokes and a painful battle with breast cancer, she found comfort in the stability of their marriage. Dodds was her anchor, a far cry from the turbulence and heartbreak that had marked her earlier years. In their home, filled with books, art, and peace, Vance finally experienced the kind of love she had long been denied. She passed away on August 17, 1979, leaving behind a legacy of laughter and a history of behind-the-scenes battles that few outside the studio ever saw. To the millions of loyal viewers who tuned in week after week to I Love Lucy, Vivian Vance and William Frawley were television gold. As Ethel and Fred Mertz, they were the quirky, quick-witted neighbors whose constant bickering made them one of the most beloved comedic pairs in TV history. But what audiences thought was a clever performance was, in many ways, a raw and unrehearsed reflection of reality. Vivian Vance couldn't stand William Frawley. In fact, she hated him. Their animosity sparked almost instantly. Vance, a refined actress with roots in the Broadway stage and a deep respect for the craft, recoiled when she learned that the gruff, gravel-voiced Frawley, more than 20 years her senior and known for his cantankerous demeanor, had been cast as her on-screen husband. At the time, Vance was in her early 40s, elegant, poised, and still considered attractive by Hollywood standards. Frawley, on the other hand, was pushing 65, bald, paunchy, and famously fond of whiskey. The casting felt to Vance like a cruel joke. She was said to have quipped, "It's ridiculous. Who would believe that I'm married to that old man?" A comment that stung Frawley to his core. He never forgot it, and he never forgave her. What followed was a professional Cold War that burned through the entire run of the show. Their scenes crackled with chemistry, not because of deep camaraderie, but because real animosity fueled their timing. Every jab, every sarcastic retort, every weary sigh carried undertones of genuine irritation. Vance, a perfectionist who approached every episode like a stage production, insisted on rehearsals, table reads, and script fine-tuning. She cared deeply about pacing, about beats, about nuance. Frawley? Not so much. A veteran of vaudeville, he prided himself on learning his lines quickly and rarely welcomed rewrites or additional takes. He despised rehearsals and often skipped them if he could. He was also known to indulge in alcohol, even during work hours, and sometimes arrived on set less than sober. To Vance, his behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was sabotage. She accused him more than once of deliberately dragging down their scenes with sloppy timing or muttered lines. In private, she called him a drunken ham. He, in turn, dismissed her as an uppity diva who had forgotten where she came from. Their feud became so well known among cast and crew that it turned into an open secret at Desilu Studios. Though Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz tried to keep the peace, they often found themselves forced to mediate tense standoffs between the warring actors. Rumors circulated that Desi once suggested giving them separate dressing rooms on opposite ends of the lot, just to keep the air on set breathable. Oddly enough, their rivalry may have enhanced the magic of the show. Audiences delighted in the cranky bickering of Fred and Ethel, never suspecting how much of it came from real resentment. The authenticity in their performances was undeniable, because it wasn't acting, it was catharsis. Frawley especially bristled at the acclaim Vance received. When she won the first Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1954, it was both a professional triumph and a private insult to him. He was never nominated, never honored, and he made no effort to hide his bitterness about it. Vance endured Frawley's boorishness quietly, venting to friends but maintaining grace in public. After I Love Lucy ended, she refused to participate in projects involving him, stating, "Not in a million years," when a spin-off featuring their characters was proposed. Following Frawley's death in 1966, she described him as difficult but good at what he did, offering a restrained acknowledgement. Their infamous feud was marked by Frawley's cruel mockery and a contractual clause preventing future collaboration, reflecting their deep animosity that barred any hope of a continued partnership. After I Love Lucy, the animosity between Frawley and Vance intensified, with both avoiding each other's mention in interviews. When Vance battled cancer in the late 1970s, Frawley, deceased for years, reportedly expressed disdain for her. Vance allegedly celebrated his death, illustrating their feud. Despite this, Vance, remembered as Ethel Mertz, faced her illness with humor and continued engaging in theater. Supported by friends and her husband John Dodds, she sought peace in Belvedere, California. Vance passed away on August 17, 1979, leaving a legacy of resilience and laughter cherished by many.